I felt his fist just inches from my face. My own father's eyes blazing with something I'd never seen before. The kitchen lights flickered, as if reflecting the tremor of tension that rippled through my bones. "You'll pay for her mistakes, too," he roared, his voice cracking like a whip through the cramped space. My heart hammered as if it wanted to escape my chest. "Dad?" I tried to explain, my voice trembling as I pressed my back against the counter, arms raised in a defensive posture. But he didn't wait. He lunged, and everything slowed down. The scrape of his chair, the metallic rattle of dishes in the sink, the smell of reheated lasagna hanging in the warm air. I caught a glimpse of my sister's framed graduation photo on the wall, her perfect smile mocking the chaos unfolding. I ducked instinctively, adrenaline blurring the details. The corner of the kitchen table caught his shoulder as he fell forward. He stumbled, more bewildered than hurt, and the moment shattered. He blinked, confusion replacing rage. I pressed my palm to my racing temple, gulped in the heavy air. "I can't," I said, voice low but steady. For years I'd walked that narrow line between trying to be my parents' good kid and secretly hating how they pitted us against one another. But this was new territory. I saw his chest heave, heard his labored breaths. My mother hovered in the doorway, eyes wide, one hand clamped to her chest as if to steady her own beating heart. "Matthew," she whispered, and shock flickered in her tone. When did I last hear my mother call me by my first name? Always Matt or Honey. The formality jolted me back to reality. He straightened, took a shaky step back, running a hand over his sweat-dampened shirt. The silence felt infinite before he turned away abruptly and stalked out of the kitchen. The front door slammed, rattling the windows. My mother exhaled, her shoulders sagging. I sank onto a bar stool, head in hands, steeling myself for the fallout. The microwaved lasagna sat abandoned on the table, steam curling above the plastic lid like a question I couldn't answer. "Are you okay?" she asked, voice muffled behind trembling lips. I looked up to find her face pale, her eyes red-rimmed. She looked decades older than the woman who dropped me at soccer practice. "I'm fine," I said, though my lips felt dry as sandpaper. That was toxic," she finished for me. She set her hand on mine. Her fingers, small and gentle, felt like a lifeline. I heard everything. I nodded, reluctant tears pricking my eyes. "He wants me to pay for Eleanor's fine." My mother's eyes flicked to the clock on the wall, 9:15. Eleanor should have been home by now. I swallowed. She got another speeding ticket. Third one. And because she's 18, they're hitting her with the full amount, which is more than I make in a month. Mom closed her eyes. "She can't keep doing this." "I know," I replied, voice raspy. I closed my eyes and remembered my sister's smug grin when she told me about the ticket. How she laughed it off like I'd laugh off a stubbed toe. She thinks Dad and I are her safety net. My mother sighed, rising to retrieve 2 mugs from the cabinet. She poured hot chamomile tea into each, bringing one to me. "Drink this," she urged gently. "It'll calm your nerves." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, inhaling the soothing scent, but calm eluded me. My mind raced through the night's events. Dad's explosive anger, my scramble to reason with him, the accusation burning in his glare. "You're defending her again, damn it." Across the city, Eleanor was probably tearing up her 5th speeding ticket in a row, already plotting her next joyride. She'd turned 20 last month, and heirloom independence had become her religion. She'd boasted to me about how she'd pay it back sometime, leaving me to juggle my own bills. Rent, utilities, that student loan haunting my account like a dark cloud. I took a sip of tea, too hot. I set the mug down, fingertips hovering above the ceramic, as if the steam might scald my soul. "Matthew," my mother said softly, "he's worried about the rent for this house, about your sister's future. But he's treating you like you're responsible for her mistakes." I closed my eyes. "I know, but..." I looked at her, eyes raw. He lunged at me. Suddenly the words rang in my chest with a hollow echo. It felt surreal, like living inside a dream I couldn't wake from. Mom sat opposite me, her own mug cradled in both hands. "You should take a break, go out with friends, get some air." I managed a small smile. "Friends? At this hour?" I glanced at the clock again. 9:15. My friends were either at late classes, at the gym, or out celebrating the weekend. But I knew what she meant. I needed space from this suffocating tension at home. Without realizing it, I reached to my pocket and gripped my phone. My grip felt desperate. I thumbed through contacts. Jenna, Leo. But none of my usual crew felt right. Then I tapped Davina. My college lab partner, the one person who never judged me, who laughed when I ruined the agar plates one too many times. I hesitated, then hit call. It rang 3 times before she picked up. "Hey, stranger," she said, her voice a melody of concern and surprise, like a balm on my frayed nerves. "Davy." "Hey." My voice cracked. "Matthew, everything okay?" I pressed my lips together, wrestling pride and fear. "Not exactly," I exhaled. Could I come over? I need to talk." "Sure." Her relief was palpable, even through the crackle of the line. "I'm still at the lab, but I can drive by and pick you up." "Would you?" "Of course," she said. "I'll be there in 20. I hung up and closed my eyes, letting her kindness wash over me. I slid off the bar stool, cradling the half-finished tea. I spotted the stack of envelopes Dad had left on the counter. Bills, notices, student loan statements. One envelope was addressed to Eleanor. Maybe it was the ticket. My chest tightened. I picked it up, turned it over in my hands. The handwriting was unfamiliar, probably a collection agency. I hesitated, then tore it open. Inside, a 1-page notice. "Third offense, $850. Due in 2 weeks or face suspension of license and additional penalties. Override fee 10%. Late fee 7% per month." I felt a wave of nausea. I slid the paper back under the pile. No, I couldn't let Dad pawn my record or assets for it. My phone buzzed, a text from Davina. "Be there in 10. Drained?" I typed, "Yeah, need to get out." She replied instantly. "I've got coffee and donuts." I managed a crooked smile. Donuts. Sugar might be the only thing keeping me afloat. My mother watched me gathering my jacket. When I placed an arm around her shoulders, she leaned in, as if bracing for impact. "I love you, you know," she whispered. Her voice cracked, as though she needed to imagine saying it. "I'm so proud of you." I kissed her forehead, felt her tremble beneath my lips. "I love you too, Mum." She sniffled, wiped her eyes, then forced a smile. "Go get some air." I slipped out the front door into the cool night, the heavy wooden door clicking shut behind me. The street was quieter than I remembered, only the distant hum of traffic and the occasional bark of a neighbor's dog. I checked my wallet. $15. Enough for coffee and donuts. Within minutes, Davina's vintage hatchback pulled up. She hopped out, her lab coat dusted with agar stains, but her grin as bright as ever. Rough night, I climbed in, closing the door. The car smelled of old leather and burnt coffee. She handed me a cardboard box. I peered inside, a dozen assorted donuts. Even the fancy maple bacon glazed she knew was my favorite, but I shouldn't eat. I grinned. "You're a lifesaver." She eased the car into traffic. "Tell me everything." I took a donut, strawberry frosted with rainbow sprinkles, and bit into it. Sweet and sticky, a small rebellion against my own stress. As the sugar hit my bloodstream, my thoughts slowed from a frenzy to a gradual unraveling. I looked out the window, city lights blurred into ribbons of gold and red. I started with the ticket. How Dad had exploded. How I'd seen something in his eyes that scared me. "He lunged," I repeated. Davina's eyes widened in the rearview mirror. "He what?" I fished out the collection notice. "He insists I cover Eleanor's fine, but I can't." "Why not?" she asked gently, glancing at me. "Because," my voice caught. I wrestled with my frustrations over the years. Dad's high expectations, the unspoken rule that the older sibling always fixed the younger one's messes. Because she never asks me to choose. It's like whatever I do, I lose. If I pay for her fine, I bail her out, then I know she'll do it again. And if I don't, he loses control. It's this tyranny of his own design. Davina nodded slowly. "You're not responsible for your sister's choices." "But I am," I whispered, blowing out a breath that shuddered. "Because Dad says so." The car skirted the corner by the gas station. Neon lights flickered. "What if," Davina ventured, "you and Eleanor approached him together?" "United?" I startled. "United?" She turned in her seat so we faced each other. Show him you two can handle your own lives. That you'll take responsibility, but only for yourselves. Maybe he's stuck in that old notion where the family works like cogs in a machine, and when one gear slips, another must jam in to fix it. I chewed on her words. They sounded possible. Scary but possible. She'd go along with that? Maybe, Davina said, or maybe she'd surprise you. I studied her in the mirror. Underneath the lab coat, she wore a faded band shirt and mismatched socks. She had always been fearless. Stained lab goggles, scribbled notebooks, a heart bigger than the petri dishes she handled. Thanks, I whispered, for being here. She smiled, reaching back to squeeze my shoulder. Always. We drove in silence, donut crumbs melting between my fingers. In that moment, I sensed a shift, not a resolution, but a promise of possibility. Something stirred in my chest, a small flame of defiance. Maybe I didn't have to be the fixer, the peacemaker, the scapegoat. Maybe denial of my father's tyranny wasn't betrayal, but an act of freedom. Down the road, the glow of her apartment block appeared. Davina parked. I grabbed my half-eaten donut and fell onto the passenger seat, exhaustion blanketing me. Sleep here if you want, she offered, voice gentle. Or I can drive you home. I shook my head. I need to sort this. I whispered. I slid out of the car, the night air crisp against my face. I lifted my chin, feeling the sticky weight of sprinkles on my lips. Whatever you decide, Davina said. I've got your back. I nodded, grateful beyond words. As I walked toward my own house, lit by the single street lamp, I wondered what would happen when Dad returned. Would he bring more fury? Would he finally break, realize he'd gone too far? Would Sister even step up? I swallowed the last bite of donut. The night was still young, and so was the fight. I hesitated on the bottom step, the porch light casting my shadow long across the welcome mat. The night was quieter now, as if even the neighborhood had settled after my father's outburst. My hand hovered over the doorknob, knuckles white, until I remembered Davina's words. You're not alone. With a steadying breath, I pushed the door open and slipped inside. The house smelled of stale air and unfinished arguments. In the living room, the TV flickered silently. Dad often left it on when he stormed out, as if tethering himself to this place. I stepped over a stray shoe, edged past the sofa where Dad's coat still draped, and climbed the stairs. Upstairs, the hallway felt narrower than I remembered, lined with family photos that suddenly looked like strangers. Our smiles stiff, dated souvenirs of happier times. I paused outside Eleanor's room. A faint glow seeped from beneath the door. I knocked lightly. Eleanor? I whispered. No answer. I pushed the door open. She sat cross-legged on the floor, back against her bed, laptop balanced on her knees. Her hair was tied in a careless bun, and she wore his old t-shirt, one she'd nicked years ago. The screen showed a halfway drafted email to some rental car company, maybe about the ticket. She looked up, surprised. Matthew, her voice cracked. You're back. I noticed the dark circles under her eyes, the tension in her shoulders. For the first time that night, I thought maybe she was scared too. Oh, we need to talk, I said, crossing my arms. The words felt heavy. Me, you, Dad. Tonight. Her eyes flickered. He's not here, she said softly. I know. I perched on the edge of her bed. But I want to do this together. She glanced at the door, as if imagining him bursting in at any moment. Then she closed her laptop. The screen went dark, and the familiar hum of the fan reminded me of silent nights I spent in high school, ghosting my assignments. What's your plan? She asked. I swallowed. I don't know yet, but I don't want to bail you out like I always have. And I don't want him to think he can blackmail me with his fists. She flinched, eyes widening in recollection. I saw the bruise under your eye, she said, voice low. You didn't tell me. I didn't want you to worry, I admitted. But yeah, I've got a mark. You saw how he was. Eleanor closed her eyes. When she opened them, they glistened. God, I messed up, she whispered. I've been so selfish. I've reached out and took her hand. It felt small and clammy. Yeah, but I think we can fix this. She looked down at our joined hands. Together, yeah, I said. We go to Dad. We face him as a united front. We tell him we're responsible for our own choices. Eleanor nodded. defiance flickering in her eyes. Okay, but what if he explodes again? I challenged her to meet my gaze. Then we stand firm. We don't shrink back. She exhaled, lifting her chin. All right, let's do this. We left her room side by side. In the hallway, the air felt charged, as if the walls themselves were bracing. At the top of the stairs, we paused. Our doors were separated by that narrow landing. Her domain, my domain. And yet neither of us belonged there right now. We belonged together, facing him. At the bottom, the living room was darker. The TV's glow a pale rectangle. I flicked it off, plunging us into silence. Eleanor took a steadying breath. Dad, she called. We heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, deliberate, like thunder rolling. We tensed. The front door latch clicked, and Dad's heavy boots echoed into the hall. He entered, shirt rumpled, eyes wild as he saw us waiting. He stopped, confusion and fury warring on his face. You too, he spat, voice hoarse. What are you up to now? Eleanor squared her shoulders. We need to talk, Dad. His eyes darted to me, then back to her. We already talked tonight. His gaze swung between us, wild, and for a moment it felt like he weighed our fates. This isn't just about tonight, I said, stepping forward. It's about everything that's been building up. About me footing your mistakes, Dad. I paused, my voice steady, despite the tremor in my chest. And about Eleanor paying her own dues. He opened his mouth, then closed it. The room stretched into an unbearable silence. Behind us, the hum of the fridge sounded like a clock counting down. Eleanor spoke, voice trembling but resolute. That ticket cost $850. You told me last week you'd suspend my license if I didn't pay it. But you also told Matt to pay for it. What do you want? Dad's jaw clenched. His fists twitched at his sides. He looked like he might erupt. Then slowly his hands unclenched. He rubbed his forehead, as if the migraine had been building for days. He began, voice cracking. I just want what's best for you both. Eleanor's eyes softened. We know, but this isn't helping. I'm 18, legal adult. I need to learn from my mistakes. And Matt shouldn't have to bail me out. He closed his eyes, exhaled a ragged breath. I'm sorry, he said, voice barely audible. He shook his head. I lost control. He looked at me, regret in his gaze. When I asked you to pay, I didn't mean to. It's okay, I said gently. We understand you're worried about the house, about rent, about bills. I gestured to Eleanor. But we're both pitching in. Eleanor found a second job at the cafe. I can help pay rent too. We'll figure it out together. He blinked, as if absorbing the words. You'll both work extra hours? He asked, voice hoarse. Eleanor nodded. I start this weekend. Evenings, and I'll budget carefully. I'm tired of this cycle. He was silent a long moment, then sank onto the couch, covering his face with his hands. I sat beside him. Eleanor hovered, then sat on the other side. We formed a tight trio, flawed, exhausted, but united. Dad ran his hand over his face. I'm sorry for lunging at you, Matt, he said, voice muffled. I shouldn't have. It hurt. I admitted. But I know you were scared. We all are. He looked at Eleanor, tears in his eyes. I'm scared you'll make bigger mistakes, and I'm scared the bills will drown us. Eleanor swallowed, blinked. Then let me prove I can handle it. Don't bail me out. Let me learn. He closed his eyes, then nodded. Okay. He opened his eyes, resolute. No bailouts. You both are adults now. I trust you. I felt a swell of relief and disbelief. Thanks, Dad. My voice was thick. He cleared his throat. And Matt, he said, looking at me. I'll try to control my temper. I placed my hand on his arm. We'll help you too. We sat there, 3 generations bound by blood and bruised egos. But for the first time in a long while, something felt right. Our resolve felt like armor, our unity a remedy for fractured ties. The next morning, things felt different. I headed to work at dawn, the sky bruised purple. Eleanor was already dressed for her shift, apron in hand. Dad waved from the doorway as we left together, an unspoken promise in his eyes. For once, it felt like a real family. That day, at work, I saw my father's lessons reflected in the customers I served: patience, fairness, compassion. And in the afternoons, when Eleanor texted me updates from the cafe, how she'd saved $30, braved a rush, apologized for a spilled latte, I felt pride bloom. A week later, the ticket money was half paid. Eleanor's paycheck and mine combined. We'd made a budget spreadsheet on our late-night calls, texting each other reminders to skip a coffee or find extra shifts. It wasn't glamorous, but it was ours. Then came the unexpected twist. One Sunday, Dad came home with 2 small cardboard boxes. He placed them on the table without a word and left the room. Eleanor and I exchanged puzzled glances, peeled back the tape, and found 2 matching keychains, tiny metal anchors, engraved family. Beneath them, a note in Dad's block letters, "You're never sinking as long as we're together." I swallowed hard, feeling tears prick. We'd navigated anger, rebellion, and fear. We'd stumbled, but we'd found our way back. And in that simple gesture, I saw the father I'd always wanted, flawed, apologetic, striving for better. Later that night, as I lay in bed, I held the anchor and thought about how fragile things had been, how one refusal to pay a fine had torn open old wounds. But more than scars, it revealed our capacity to unite, to confront pain, and to forgive. In the glow of my bedside lamp, I whispered into the darkness, "We did it," and I meant it for my sister, for my father, and for the stubborn hope that family, messy as it may be, could anchor us all.